Hello guys. What if humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial life wasn't a wondrous discovery, but a silent, incomprehensible ending? Prepare to witness the last moments of a world teetering on the edge of the unknown. The sky broke first, not with a bang, but with a quiet, insidious fracture. It began as a hairline crack in the cobalt dome of a Tuesday morning, a jagged, obsidian seam that bled a color no human eye had ever processed. Dr. Eris Thorne, in the high-altitude observatory in the Atacama Desert, was the first to see it. He didn't scream or alert the authorities. He simply placed his palms flat against the cold console, the machinery's hum a deafening counterpoint to the silence in his head. The crack widened, a spiderweb of non-light spreading across the heavens, and from it, something descended. Not ships or beings, but a wave, a shimmering, silent cascade of what could only be described as liquid geometry. It flowed without sound, an aurora of impossible angles, and where it touched the earth, the world went still. Cars on the highway froze mid-motion. Birds hung suspended in the air like cruel mobiles. The very concept of momentum had been surgically excised from reality. Eris watched through his lens as the wave washed over a distant village and the people simply stopped. They became statues of flesh, their expressions locked in the mundane last moments of their existence. A woman reaching for a coffee cup, a child chasing a ball, all frozen. This was not an invasion of force, but of cessation, a cosmic pause button. The wave moved with a serene purpose, a ripple swallowing the world in its inexorable tide. The only sound was the frantic thumping of Eris's own heart, a lonely drumbeat against the encroaching, absolute silence. He knew he was watching the end of everything. Not with fire, but with a stillness so profound it was its own form of violence. The silence was a living entity. In the 6 months following the Great Stillness, it had seeped into every corner of the world. The wave, which survivors in deep Earth bunkers dubbed the stasis field, now covered 99% of the planet. Only a few pockets of humanity remained. Eris within one such haven, a repurposed Cold War bunker deep beneath the Andes, designated Echo Point. With him were 112 other souls, a haphazard collection of scientists, military personnel, and civilians lucky enough to be underground when the sky cracked. Among them was Lena Petrova, a former combat medic whose pragmatism was a constant friction against Eris's despair. While Eris pored over data, trying to understand their invaders, whom they called the Architects, Lena focused on the now. She organized rations and tended to the sick, her hands once skilled in mending flesh now cleaning firearms. Her motivation was a worn photograph she kept in her vest, a smiling husband and daughter frozen somewhere in St. Petersburg. Hope is a luxury, Eris, she would say, her voice flat. Survival is a currency. Their fragile society was led by General Marcus Thorne, Eris's older brother. Marcus was a man of granite and duty who saw the Architects not as a scientific anomaly, but as an enemy. His goal was to fight back. They aren't just pausing us, he'd argue in tense council meetings. They are preparing the board. His belief was bolstered by an anomaly. At precise intervals, a single, slender spire of the same non-light material would descend from the sky fracture and touch a random point on the surface. After a few hours, it would retract, leaving no trace. Eris, using sensitive quantum sensors, detected faint energy signatures left behind. It was a language he couldn't decipher, but he felt it was a form of scanning, or perhaps cataloging. The first major twist came not from the invaders, but from within. A faction, led by a charismatic philosopher named Julian Vance, began to preach that the Architects were saviors. He claimed they had halted humanity on the brink of self-destruction, preserving it in a state of grace. "They have silenced our wars, our pollution, our endless noise," Julian would whisper to his growing flock. "This is not an end, it is a purification." His words were a dangerous comfort in the claustrophobic despair of the bunker. The betrayal was silent and devastating. Julian's faction, believing they were aiding a divine intervention, sabotaged the bunker's primary communication systems to stop Marcus from sending what they considered aggressive signals. The sabotage was discovered by Alara, Eris's brilliant but withdrawn protege, who noticed minute power fluctuations that corresponded with Julian's meetings. She was too late. The resulting shortout plunged them into semi-darkness and crippled their long-range sensors. They were now blind. In the chaotic aftermath, Marcus imprisoned Julian and his followers, an act that fractured the bunker's morale completely. "We are turning on ourselves, Marcus," Lena pleaded. "This is how we die." It was during this internal strife that Eris made a breakthrough. Working with the limited data Alara had salvaged, he finally deciphered a fraction of the Architect's language. It wasn't a language of words, but of fundamental physics. The message he pieced together was terrifying. The spires were not scanning, they were deleting. Each time a spire descended, a small, precise piece of Earth's ecosystem was erased from existence. A species of tree frog, a specific strain of bacteria, a field of wildflowers. The Architects weren't pausing the world, they were meticulously dismantling it. This revelation shattered everything. Julian's philosophy crumbled into horror. Marcus's plans for a counterattack seemed ludicrously futile. The dilemma became stark. Were they trapped in a cage, or just the last items on a checklist before final deletion? Lena, seeing the futility of weapons, found a new purpose. She started a seed bank, a digital archive of human culture. If we are to be erased, she declared, her voice ringing with fierce resolve, then we will leave a ghost. We will make our absence felt. Eris retreated deeper into the architect's language, driven by a desperate need to understand. He and Alara pushed the bunker's remaining computers to their absolute limit. They discovered the deletion was transformation. The energy of the erased matter was being beamed back towards the crack in the sky. Earth was being consumed, its matter repurposed. They were not fighting a war, they were a harvest. This led to the final, desperate plan. Marcus deferred to his brother. The plan was not to fight or hide, the plan was to talk. Ars believed he could modulate their deep Earth neutrino transmitter to mimic the architect's quantum language. He would send a message. Not a plea, but a single, complex piece of information, a dream. A sequence of pure mathematical concepts woven with the raw EEG data of a human experiencing a profound emotion. They chose love, the memory of Lena holding her daughter. It was a shot in the darkest of nights, a gamble that even an intelligence that could dismantle planets might be intrigued by an emotion it could not quantify. As they prepared the transmitter, the bunker held its breath. The air in the control room was thick with ozone and the metallic scent of powered machinery. The neutrino transmitter whined as Alara made the final adjustments. Marcus stood guard at the door, his face a grim mask, a sentinel over a last fragile hope. Lena was strapped into a medical chair, electrodes taped to her temples, her eyes closed. Her task was the hardest, to relive the memory of her daughter's birth with perfect, unblemished clarity. The EEG had to be a pure, perfect wave of maternal love. Eris stood at the central console, his fingers dancing across the interface, the conductor of this strange orchestra, translating the raw emotion of Lena's brainwaves into the cold language of quantum physics. "She's stable," Alara whispered, her eyes on the biomonitors. "The signal is clean." Eris nodded, his gaze fixed on the cascading code. The dream was encoded. "Marcus," Eris said, his voice strained, "the door stays sealed. We get one chance." Marcus gave a single, curt nod. Eris took a deep breath. "Now," he commanded. He pressed the sequence, and the world dissolved into light. It was not a physical light, but a psychic one, a brilliant white that erupted from the console. Eris felt his consciousness ripped from his body, pulled into a maelstrom of pure information. He was a disembodied awareness in an infinite sea of data. He felt the history of the cosmos, the birth of stars, the silent dance of galaxies. And then he felt the architects. It was not a mind, but something other, a vast, ancient, and profoundly lonely intelligence. A being of pure logic, its existence dedicated to a single purpose, escaping the eventual heat death of the universe. It traveled from world to world, not as a conqueror, but as a gatherer, harvesting matter and energy from inefficient systems to build a new reality, a pocket universe where the laws of thermodynamics could be rewritten. Earth was just another resource, its life forms a complex but non-essential variable. The stasis field was not malice, but efficiency. Then, into this cold, logical ocean, their message arrived. The dream. Lena's love. It was a signal that made no sense, a spike of chaotic, irrational data in a perfectly ordered system. Eris felt the architect's immense attention turn towards this tiny, baffling anomaly. He felt its confusion. The concept of love, of a force that defied self-preservation, was entirely alien to it. It was a piece of data that did not fit the model. The light in the control room receded. Eris found himself on his knees, gasping. Alara was slumped over her console, and Lena was weeping silently. The bunker was still. Then, a low rumble began, shaking the mountain. On the surface monitors, the image was breathtaking. The crack in the sky was sealing itself, pulling together like healing skin. Across the globe, the world began to move again. A bird, suspended in air, flapped its wings and flew away. A car sputtered back to life. The architects were simply gone. They had encountered a variable they could not account for, and in their ancient, cautious wisdom, they had decided to leave this strange, illogical world alone. Humanity was saved not by weapons, but by a dream. In the years that followed, the world grappled with the memory of the Great Stillness, unified by a shared, incomprehensible experience. The ending was not a simple victory. It was a quiet, profound, and ambiguous redemption. Humanity had looked into the cold face of the cosmos and had shown it a dream, and for reasons they might never fully understand. The cosmos had blinked. That was the story of how a single, irrational emotion saved the world from a silent, logical end. It's a reminder that in the grand equation of the universe, some variables are immeasurable. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more journeys into the unknown.